Hi, and welcome to the SevenJackpots Podcast, the podcast where we talk about everything that is online gambling and betting in India. This time around, we have a special guest with us because we're going to talk about the kind of like the difference between gambling and betting, so sports betting. And so with us here today, we do have one of our colleagues, Shane Hand, who is a bit more of a sports nerd than me and probably the rest of us. So hi, Shane. Would you mind telling us a little bit about like who you are and what you do within the company?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Shane. I'm originally from Ireland, and I've been in SEO and content now for about 8 years. About 6 years of this has been within the iGaming industry. So I started off when I first moved to Malta. I worked in just a digital marketing agency, and this kind of opened me up to the whole 360 perspective between content, SEO, CRM, social media, that kind of thing. And then I kind of got a bit itchy feet, and I started doing some freelance content writing, which was with Casino Euro at the time. And this kind of opened me up then to the world of iGaming, sports betting and casino. And soon after that, then I joined Leo Vegas Group, where obviously met Mateus, and I met you, Felicia, as well. We were all on the same team within the SEO and the content team. And so I was taken on here as an SEO executive. And, soon after that, I became one of the content managers within the team, and then I was kind of overseeing various markets, so all of the English language markets, LATAM markets, and the Italian market. And one of the big tasks that I was in charge of was kind of overseeing the content creation for new markets as well. So within this, we had Chile and Peru, we had Brazil, we had Japan, and obviously then, of course, we had India as well. So this was kind of my introduction to India from an iGaming perspective, and it really opened my eyes to the huge potential within this market back then, and obviously still there now as well. So yeah, and then for the last 3.5 or so years, I've been managing the sports affiliate website, betrallyindia.com, where we provide reviews for sports books within India. We provide betting guides, and most importantly, then we provide cricket betting prediction articles as well. So yeah, it's great to be here. So looking forward to this.
It's very nice to be here, Shane. Looking forward to pick your brains as much as possible.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, today's topic is really we wanted to kind of try to dive a bit deeper into the difference between gambling and betting, because they are treated very, very differently, especially in India and also in other markets, but they are also two different things to some degree. So I was just wondering if we could start by maybe kind of just give an explanation, because out of us four, I am definitely the least experienced when it comes to sports and sports betting. And I think that probably some of our listeners are also a bit new on the sports betting version of gambling. So could maybe you, Shane, explain a bit about like how betting and gambling works to someone who is fairly new to it?
Yeah, sure. So I guess betting, kind of in its most basic form, it's putting money down on a specific outcome of a sporting event, and then getting paid if this outcome is achieved. So it sounds pretty easy when you kind of just explain it like that, but there are hundreds of different ways that you can kind of bet just on one game alone. So if we're looking at cricket, for example, you have the more popular betting markets such as Match Winner. You've got things like the top batsman, the top bowler. You have the first innings totals as well. These kind of things, and even you can get down to things such as, which is quite a popular bet, is betting on the coin toss at the start of the game as well. So there's huge variety on basically any aspect of the game that you can actually place a bet on. So these are what are called kind of the pre-match bets, and these are kind of done live throughout the game as well. Another kind of aspect of betting is the outright markets. So instead of just focusing on a game by game basis, these are looking at the entire league as opposed to just kind of very minuscule details of one game. So here you can bet on things such as, who will win the league, who will finish bottom of the table, and, who will win the player of the season, this kind of thing. A kind of the interesting thing that kind of combines all this is how the odds actually work. And the odds are dynamic. So you might get one odds on a bet pre-game, and this will change as the kind of these will change in real time as the events of the game actually unfold. So taking a kind of a very basic example here, let's say there are two teams playing. One of the teams is the favorites, and based on the fact that they're favorites to win, the bookmaker has given them odds of 1.7. So basically, for every 100 rupees you place down, you'll get 170 rupees back. Now, as the game progresses, they're underperforming, and the bookmakers have kind of seen that they might be less likely to win the game, so they've decided to increase the odds from 1.7 to 1.9. So if you were to actually place your bet in this moment in time, you're actually getting better value for your bet as opposed to if you were to place the bet at the start of the game. So let's say the odds go now up to 1.9. So now if you put down that 100 rupees, you're going to get 190 as opposed to 170 back. So I think a lot of betting is how the odds are kind of interacting with real-time events. And these are constantly changing. I think this is one of the main differences between betting and casino-based gambling.
Cool. And a follow-up question there. Since you've been working with the Indian market for so long, is there any specific patterns if you generalize the punter in India? Like if you look at the cricket vertical or sport, for example, is there any specific odds that stands out, like being more common in that sense? Because you mentioned a lot of variety now, but I was more thinking if there are anything that is very common to an Indian punter.
Yeah, so I would say the most common types of bets for Indian punters would be the match winner. The match winner, I think the coin toss is quite a popular one as well. So I feel sports betting in an online environment, especially within India, it's quite a new market. It's quite a new concept to people. So these kind of bets, which are basically 50-50, are always seem to be the most common ones. And the odds won't generally be great on, especially the coin toss, because you're going to get odds of maybe 1.9 maximum. You're not going to make much money off it, but it seems to be these 50-50 type bets which are the most common.
I think that's quite interesting, actually, that the coin toss is that popular, because I think that out of all of the betting, like the odds that you can do, that's one of the closest ones that you get to other types of gambling, since it's like the outcome can't really ever change. I mean, the coin can't have a bad day, or like you can't watch the statistics of the coin, or like if they're playing on grass, or like it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. But the funny thing is that people actually do try and work out statistics for how the coin will land. They'll look at the historical, how historically the coin has landed within those games. And, there's a lot of superstition within this as well. So, for example, you had Virat Kohli, which was the Indian captain for their cricket team. And he was notorious for losing the coin toss. So, like a lot of the time they would bet against him because he would historically have lost the toss so much in the past.
Oh, that's really cool. But yeah, I mean, it kind of correlates very well with the games that are popular in India, especially like the casino, the table games, because I mean, games like Andabahar, Baccarat, War, Dragon Tiger, those kind of 50-50 games are always performing very well. So it's the same kind of it's just an easy, you want to have fun, you want to be able to win some money, you don't want to have to be that engaged in that thing. So that's quite interesting, actually, that it's that cricket has that kind of feature as well for people. But so if you look at, I mean, gambling is in a whole is obviously pretty big, but I mean, sports betting is massive, and it's massive everywhere. But like, what is it that is so mesmerizing with sports betting specifically?
Yeah, I think a lot of it actually stems from the popularity of sports itself. Sports is such an integral part of every culture within the world. And, within every one of these cultures, you'll find tribalistic behaviors around multiple different sports as well within these. Like if you're looking at, for example, just the Google searches globally for 2022, that out of the top 10 searches, 5 of these were related to sports. And actually, interesting enough, 4 of these were related to cricket. So it just shows you the huge potential and the vast amount of people who are actually engaging with sports globally here. Like just thinking from these kind of tribalistic behaviors within India alone, you've got obviously cricket, you've got football, horse racing, kabaddi, you've got hockey, you've got tennis, just to name a few. Each one of these sports with their own following of people as well who are very involved in these. For many people, this kind of engagement with sports is kind of an extension of who they are. It's part of their identity in a way. And this sheer volume of viewership for some of these events is astronomical as well. So, according to the BARC, which is the Broadcast Audience Research Council in India, for the opening weekend of IPL 2022, there was 229 million people tuning in to watch that. So
wow.
It's insane that the amount of sheer number of people here. If you take that concept of of sports, betting and sports, they happen in tandem of each other in this way. So it's far more accessible than gambling in a sense. So people are already really engaged in sports, and then kind of moving into betting is just a small step away, a small step to the side. So I know in my own life, for example, in my own personal experience, I know a lot of people who are really, really passionate about sports. A lot of people who really love rugby, they love football. And on occasion, they'll actually place some bets on these. And now these people don't identify as sports bettors or professional bettors at all. They're just, they enjoy the sport that they love, and they want to add an extra element of entertainment or excitement to a game that they're watching. So they might place some bets once in a while. So I think this is why it attracts such a large crowd. It's kind of working in tandem with sports, which is such a huge part of culture globally.
Awesome.
Have you seen any other patterns with the Indian punter? So we know that cricket are huge, but do they also like to play on other sport events as well? I think coming from Europe, we have a vast interest in several sport events going on, not just the domestic leagues. So, for example, I like football, Premier League, obviously. So that's one type of events I can bet on. And then you have the Swedish football league as well. So when I bet on various matches and events that is going on across several countries. Is that the case in India as well, or do they prefer to bet on cricket in India only?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the vast majority of it will be around cricket. But saying that, you have the Indian Super League, which is a football league, and there's quite a good following around that. And it's really building momentum in the last few years. Other than that, kabaddi, what I've noticed on Bet Rally India anyway, when you have when kabaddi is actually being played, there are huge spikes for people searching for kabaddi betting related keywords. So I would say still 90% of it will be cricket based, but you are still seeing relevant traffic coming in through football betting on the ISL and through kabaddi as well. Actually, interesting enough, horse racing, which is, as we know, it's completely legalized within India. It's fully regulated in India, and there are quite a few searches based around that as well. But so it is quite broad, the interest there, but it's still, cricket is king in India. There's no denying that.
The remaining 10% might still add up to hundreds of thousands of searches, because that's India.
Yeah, that's still a few million people for sure. So,
yeah. But I wanted to go back to what you said about the extra excitement that that sports betting brings to the very game, and I think that's the main thing that differentiates gambling, like classic gambling, roulette or poker, from sports betting, because that extra layer of excitement, of entertainment is because you have something personally at stake. you're not just watching the game, but you have something at stake, and that makes it more engaging for you as a viewer. And that even I've seen people that bet on a game just because it has huge media coverage. They don't care about the sport, that the game, but let's say there's an office pool and people, it's a World Cup, so everybody places a small bet, and it makes it more exciting for them to follow the game, which is already covered everywhere. So it's really, for me, it's really very different from simple gambling, because it's not something that like slots or roulette. The roulette spins and that's it. But the event makes it much more engaging, and you placing a bet is just, you have something at stake. Personally, is what I wanted to say.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot more emotional involvement when it comes to betting, because you're first off, you're watching the team that you love playing a game, and then you want to put some money down on that too. So yeah, completely agree with that.
On the other hand, that also makes it more social. If you want to go in that direction, like I said, with office co-workers or friends or family, if you want to brag about how well you predicted a game, or the score, or just little things within it, it's you're not about to brag if you won on slots, like a handful of cash. But if you with your buddies, if you I know the game so well that I can tell that I see what I won last week. And so people share advice about sports based on that, and it's just another. Then again, it's a layer of bonding with people, because sports it has a bonding element in general. If you follow that kind of sport, that makes you part of the global tribe that watches that sport. And if you bet on that, it's just another way of bonding to people that follow those markets.
Yeah, I think an aspect of what really makes it such a massive thing globally as well is there's this informal element to it as well. So you might just be, let's say you and a couple of your friends, you're just like, without having any involvement with a sports book, you put some cash down on each other for the outcome of a game. So like, even it's so ingrained within sports itself. Like it's almost normalized to just say, I'm just going to place €5 down with my friend, and then if I win, I get a €5 back, kind of a thing. So even without any like professional websites or anything in place, people are just doing it for fun.
Yeah. I'm currently doing it, but not for sports. We're doing it for the Swedish takeouts of the Eurovision Song Contest. But it's very like we have a built-in app and everything. So, but I think that one thing that comes to mind for me when I look at like the differences between sports betting and gambling is also that I guess that it's part of the fun that in betting you kind of place money on another person, like you're doing it for that someone else is going to do something. So you kind of put in your own trust in that whatever you're betting on, that person is going to do what you're hoping that they're doing. While if you're gambling, you're doing it yourself. So like it's only your own outcome, which means that like if you do poorly in a game, you can only blame yourself, which might not be as exciting as being able to like motivate someone by cheering on. Or being, like upset if they're not really following through what you hope that they were doing. But I think that this is like a good segue of what you just spoke about, Sabina, to go into this a bit tricky kind of topic on the skill part of sports betting. Because as you said, like if you can talk about, if you know a lot about the game and you know a lot about your team and the statistics and everything, then for a lot of people, and also in Indian law, Indian law, sort of. There is skill involved. In horse racing, it's skill involved. But sports betting isn't really considered skill, even though it's kind of like the same. You're doing the same thing. You're learning about the participants of the event. So like, what is it that makes sports betting a skill-based game? And like, to what extent is it a skill? Because you can't 100% predict the outcome of a game.
Yeah, in a sense, as you're saying, it kind of is a skill. But I think, when you're taking gambling into consideration, there's no skill involved at the end of the day. It's purely based on chance. Now, as you're saying, you have heaps of statistics that you can look into for sports. In cricket alone, you can look at teams head-to-heads over the last number of games, over the last number of years. How they perform in specific stadiums, how they perform in certain weather conditions. Even looking at individual players' performance under all of these conditions too. So you have so much statistics and so much data that you can kind of sieve through, and based on all of this, you can kind of create a narrative of how you believe the game will pan out. So I think there's a little bit of skill involved in here, because you need to know how to understand that data and how to actually apply that data to the game that's coming up. But even saying that, you can put all this data, you can spend hours and hours creating this narrative, but at the end of the day, you could still be wrong. And this is how it is. Even professional bettors are only considered good if they're right just over half of the time. So something like 52 to 55% success rate is considered extremely good for a professional bettor. So it's a hard one to kind of decipher if it is skill or chance. I think there's more of a skill when it comes to betting is finding value within your bets, more so than kind of trying to predict the outcome of an event. So betting value itself, like if you're to see something that a bookmaker is giving you odds of 1.7 for, and based on all of your research that you've done and all of the statistics that you've went through, you believe that it should be valued at 1.5. So that 0.2 is what's called betting value. And I think the skill in actually finding that across any kind of bets that can be placed, more so than trying to predict the outcome.
I'm guessing that if you would draw a correlation between that and between gambling, I would assume that would be kind of like understanding which types of bets in a game that would be the most valuable. Obviously, when you're playing slots, then it doesn't really matter, because there's just one bet and that's spinning. But for example, if you're playing roulette, you might want to not only place one straight up bet all the time, because that's going to make you the lowest probability of you winning, even though it pays when it does work. But you want to find something in between there where that gives you the most value for your money. I guess that would be like the gambling version of the betting value.
Yeah, exactly. And even within betting as well, you have things like, let's say, player of the game, where based on what player, you could have odds of about 18 for a player to actually win. So if you call this correctly, you've made your money for X amount of other bets that you've lost out on, as opposed to if you're just going to bet on a match winner, where the odds, maybe you might get 2.4 maximum for a team to win. Very rarely get much more than 3 if they're the favorites. So there's that as well, that you can place X amount of bets on the match winner versus I'm just going to go and put 20 rupees on who's going to win the game, who's going to be player of the game. And if you call that right, then I think there's a bit of skill involved in that, more so than, okay, I think this team's going to win the game.
But would you say that the more accurate definition is that you have a higher probability of winning if you are a gambler and you look at the bigger picture of odds, for example? So like you were saying with roulette, for example, obviously if you play on more numbers, you have a higher probability of winning. But in gambling, it's quite straightforward. If the top teams are playing against the teams in the lower bracket, if you bet on those teams, you should have a higher probability to win. And you could say that there are some skills into that as well, obviously.
Yeah, of course. I mean, anything that involves you researching and understanding what the knowledge of the situation, that is skill. There's a skill to that. Not everyone will have that knowledge, and not everyone will spend the time to understand and have the skill of seeing this. So I guess there is certain skill elements there as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if I were to go into Premier League, or if I would go into any kind of league and I would have to bet on a team, I would have no idea which ones are better than the other one. So obviously anyone who is interested and has followed it has a huge advantage over me, because like they know already which teams will not make it, as far as I might want if I would bet on the outright market, for example. I do have a question though. I'm not sure if you have an answer to it, but it's something that I thought about earlier today. The fact that there are odds on games and on events, does that in any way like affect the players? Like, is there like a part of like the pressure of that someone has placed massive amounts of money and that you have to like perform for them? I mean, I guess that it's the same thing with like if you're sponsored or whatever, but like, is there like an aspect of skill in that as well, or does it not matter at all?
I think these people are getting paid so much money that I don't think it really matters to them at the end of the day. But I'm sure there are aspects where there's like, okay, they see that they're the favorites to score a goal in the first half, and then there's pressure for them to do that. But I mean, at the end of the day, they're professionals, and like they have to put aside any kind of fear or any kind of ego that they have based on the odds that they're seeing. So I'm sure there are certain players who will feel intimidated by this, but I guess the big leagues, they don't really care.
I think in the past 20, 25 years, I feel at least that there is always a few scandals every year around some professional players who have placed a bet on sorry. They have placed a bet on a game where they have participated themselves, and obviously they are not allowed to do that. So I think you're touching upon something here, and I can't remember the last guy who got caught, but I'm sure there are a few ones every year who get caught up by doing that. So either if it's the goalkeeper who let in a few more extra goals, I don't know. But in general, I think that most of them are professionals. But if I would have been a professional football player and I like to bet as well, I would definitely have a close eye to the odds and just see how things are playing out. That's for sure. Just a question to you, Shane. Has there been any crazy bets in India in the past years? I saw now when I followed the Kindred report, they had a massive punter playing on NFL in the US. I think he placed a bet on like $5 or $6 million, and the team that he was betting on, they won. Have you seen any like reports from India with regards to crazy amounts being placed or bet on a specific team or outcome?
I actually haven't, no. I think it's quite a difficult thing to pinpoint in India because it's unregulated, and I don't think people want to really communicate if they're winning big amounts of money, in a sense. So no, I haven't heard of any of these kind of crazy big wins at all.
But say that this is also where sports betting reminds me, and statistically it's like the behavior of punters is so much more like market investors, and this is where it brings it close to the skill of making informed decisions. Because yes, on one hand, sports books operators buy this huge piles of data from providers that, all the things that Shane mentioned, like performance history, injuries, weather conditions, and everything. And like they even do psychological evaluations. But if you think you know more than the house, and if you think you're making an informed decision and you put down as much as a few million on a game, then you're just making an investment because you're pretty sure you have a good chance. And if you're more informed, that you just increase your edge, increase your chances of winning. And it's really, for me, that makes it more of a skill action, a skill investment, a skill gaming than, for example, let's say poker. Poker is recognized as a skill gaming in India, as so much as and it's horse racing is, and fantasy leagues are, but just not every sport. So by the time lawmakers come around to it, it's it might take some time, but for me, it's really so much skill involved. It's predominantly skill and knowledge and an ability to analyze all these factors. It's just like market investment. You're never sure you're going to win, but you think you're making informed decisions. So
yeah, and that's I mean, I think that it is a bit odd that sports betting isn't regulated yet fully in India, and but normally when you're looking at sports betting and gambling, it seems that sports betting is usually the ones that gets regulated first. So like, why do you like, Shane? Do you have like any like idea of like why that normally comes before gambling?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to do with this kind of passive impact that we've seen betting having when it kind of piggybacks off the popularity of the sports industry. So, you know, you have the fact that it's so widely available through people's interest in sports means that, you know, by default, first off, it's more accessible than casino-based gambling, and it's also opening betting up to a lot more people as well. And this is pretty heavily enforced within sports betting events or just sports events as well. So, like, if you take the English Premier League, for example, you have 20 teams, and out of these 20 teams, there are 8 of these teams which are sponsored by the likes of Betway, Fun88, Sportsbet.io, these kind of guys. So, like, massive websites that are focused pretty much predominantly on sports betting. Even the advertising at the stadiums, you're seeing these logos pretty much everywhere as well. And then during the adverts, during the halftime, you're also seeing adverts for these guys too. So I think this how these two things kind of work together is a big impact. Like if you're looking at India, for example, you had IPL 2020, which was actually sponsored by Dream 11, the fantasy betting website, which was India's first tech unicorn as well. So. And like, if you're looking into kind of regulated markets, unregulated markets, and semi-regulated markets. So, for example, India, which is completely unregulated when it comes to sports betting, and this industry, the sports betting industry, is estimated to be of value. It's hard to pinpoint the value, but it's somewhere between $40 and $150 billion. Now, obviously, this is a hard figure to pinpoint because, a lot of this betting is done informally through betting houses. A lot of it's done through cash, and a lot of it's done through black market routes as well. So it's very, very difficult to put a number on this. But if you're to take a regulated market, let's look at the UK, for example. The betting sector within the UK in 2021 was valued at about $5.4 billion. Now, this is only 5% of the global market size as well. So you can really get an understanding of how much money is in this industry and how much states and governments are willing to benefit if they actually regulate this. The US is one prime example. So they're kind of in the process of regulating and legalizing sports betting. I think, is it 36 states at the moment where it's legal. I think over 20 of them, it's legal for online sports betting. But in 2022 alone, US bettors placed a total betting value of $73 billion. Now, that's just the bets that were placed down. And of this, the sports betting industry, its revenue was $5.7 billion. And from this $5.7 billion, the federal government received $1.3 billion. That's a lot of money that can be invested within the country, within creating new safer, responsible gambling initiatives, providing resources for problem gambling as well, all these kind of things. So I think this is a huge part of why it's regulated first. If other aspects aren't usually regulated, it's because you're looking at the sheer number of people that are involved in this. Again, if we're taking that example of where we're seeing, sports betting, just sports alone, and the amount of people who are invested and engaged in sports, it's a huge number when you compare it to like those who are invested within casino or who are engaged within casino. Now I know that the lifetime value for a sports bettor might be considerably lower than, say, a high roller within the casino playing, blackjack or roulette, but you're still getting this massive number of people who are partaking in it. I think this is what gives it the priority for a lot of governments to regulate first.
Yeah, and I would assume that also sports is not just for adults. A lot of minors are engaged and interested in sports, and that's not the case for casino for obvious reasons. But I guess that like the regulation is also a priority to protect minors from underage gambling and from receiving, I guess, marketing or commercials about these betting sites, and that would be, misleading or in any way. So I guess that they have a bigger social responsibility to regulate betting, and it is because you said that so many people are engaged in it on a daily basis almost.
I think from what I've heard with regards to India specifically, there are major lobby organizations working for Dream 11, for example, that are completely against regulating sports betting, and that's for obvious reasons. I mean, I don't know the market share that they have, Dream 11 in India, but it must be around 60-70% at least. So obviously it's not in their favor if they are to push forward with regulating sports betting in general. But I also think that betting in general has a huge part to play in the ecosystem around sports, because the amount of sponsorships that and money that is being created, it always goes back to the grassroots. And I think the best example is the Italian market, where they banned sponsorships from betting companies. And correct me if I'm wrong, Spillen, but you're based there. I think at least 30-40% of the Italian professional football clubs were struggling financially due to not being able to get money, or at least the same amounts as they were used to when they worked with sports betting clubs. So I think play a huge part in the ecosystem as well, in terms of giving back to the grassroots and whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, Matthias, because they were struggling, and within I think 18 months they gave back control to the entire system, because and that hurt especially minor clubs, like from volleyball to football to anything you can think of. And they just decided that they need to tighten up regulations where you can advertise, not around schools, and you protect minors and platforms and everything. So they just perfected the whole rule book about who you can sponsor and how you can sponsor them. But they completely gave up, and this is just another point in favor of not ignoring the elephant in the room. We can talk about why it's good to regulate sports betting for hours, why it's good to protect consumers from not receiving your money to simply betting on a match that's fixed if the whole industry is not regulated. But what Shane showed us with all these numbers is that it's because of the social significance of sports and sports betting why it gets to be regulated first. In the States, it got regulated, and in the matter of 3-4 years, they just it exploded everywhere. And it's in Europe, it's really I can't think of a country that hasn't regulated sports betting. So it's just so important to people, and it's everywhere. So it's better to do things right, and not have people launder money and fix matches. And so just it's important to not ignore it.
So I was thinking if we could go into the new kid on the block, I guess, which is esports, because esports didn't exist just a couple of years ago, basically, and now it's just exploding. And I saw somewhere that the estimation is that esports is soon going to just blow past football in regards to number of people being involved and engaged in it. Do you have any what's going on in India with that? Because obviously India is a very, very big market when it comes to esports and teams.
Yeah. So, I mean, esports in general is definitely still quite a niche. I think looking at some figures, I think it was around 5% of the bigger guys whose revenue would be coming from esports. But saying that, I think the Asian markets in general are kind of at the forefront of esports. You know, I know a couple of Asian countries where they'll actually have scholarships set up for people who are playing esports. So it's been taken very, very seriously in Asia. And you know, I think this is something that's really, really should be on the forefront for a lot of companies, especially in the next 10 to 15 years as well. You know, because we're looking at the kind of the average age of someone who's engaged in esports is about, I think it's around 26, something like that. Whereas you compare this to the average age of somebody who's engaged in sports, which would be closer to 50. Now, obviously, these are global figures. They're not specifically for India, but I mean, it still applies. So, you know, this kind of cohort of 20 to 30-year-olds who are, you know, just probably coming into becoming more financially influential at the moment. This will peak in about 10, 15 years. So there definitely will be a huge market. If not, this will be in direct competition with traditional sports, especially when it comes to betting in these couple of years. And I think it's worth noting here as well that the kind of the sheer numbers again. So we talked about the sheer numbers of people who are interested in sports, but this also applies for esports as well. I think globally there's about 530 million people who engaged in esports last year. And about roughly half of these people would consider themselves enthusiasts within esports. And these numbers are just, you know, they're projected to increase significantly over the next couple of years. So if you want to apply these same principles which we talked about in traditional sports to esports, combined with this kind of steady increase on a yearly basis, it's definitely going to become a force to be reckoned with within the next couple of years.
I'm trying to think if there are any operator or brands that are focusing on offering a tailor-made product for the esport community in India, and I don't think I've seen any so far. I know that most brands has sections on their website where you can bet on esport, but it's nothing like super localized. I think also that India are actually the only country that I'm aware of that has banned a few very popular esport games, PUB, for example, due to them being developed by or owned by a Chinese company. So it's also a very interesting market in that perspective.
Yeah, even if you're looking at search volumes around kind of esports related keywords in India, it's very, very low at the moment. I think like esports betting itself as a keyword, I think it's just over 200 monthly search volume. Whereas if you're to compare that to online betting, I think it's closer to around 10,000 thereabouts. So it's still very much in its infancy in India. And like what you're saying, Matthias, where they're actually banning a lot of the popular esports games as well, it's doing it no favors at all.
No, and I guess that's like the only, I mean, it's not like any other sport is banned in India because of like connections with other countries. Like it's the only, I mean, it's not like you're not allowed to play football because it originates from a country that your country isn't like happy with. So it does definitely put like a little bit of an extra spin on the on the availability and on the interest. And I also guess that like, I mean, India is overall such a new market when it comes to most things online and online interactions. I mean, it was just, I mean, the knowledge when it comes to doing things online, whether it is purchasing things or betting or streaming things, is quite new for India. I mean, India is still rolling out 4G and 5G in places. So I mean, a lot of people haven't had good internet connection even. So I'm guessing that that's also part of it. That it's such a new thing that like people might just not have gotten to it yet. That you can actually stream.
This is where we get to a point where people our age, although there's some differences, start to discuss things that we don't understand. Because what I've seen, in dedicated sections, operators do offer some of the betting markets on esports, like who's the outright winner, who's the session winner, who's the outstanding performer, and everything like that. So we can talk about that, but it's not really sports in a pure sense, because it's competitive video gaming. So you can't really research weather conditions, psychologically how they feel, what's their performance history, have they had any indisposition in the past few days, because you don't know that, and it's really this is available for top sports and the top athletes. So it's not really the same thing, but it will get more influential, because think about the average age of gamers in India. Think about every young person in India is enough tech savvy to follow these trends that it will take weeks to describe. So it's really a niche for now, and I expect it to continue like that for a few more years, because it's not straightforward betting, it's not straightforward gambling. So let's see how it develops.
For sure.
All right, awesome. Well, a huge thank you for taking your time and sharing your knowledge with us, Shane. Much appreciated. And I guess that we'll see you guys next time. Not really sure what the topic would be. Again, if you have any ideas or topics that you would want us to take and discuss, feel free to just leave a comment in the comment section below this video, and we'll see you soon. Bye, guys.
Have a good one.
Bye.